In 2001, one of America's largest companies collapsed almost overnight. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Investors lost more than $70 billion. One of the world's biggest accounting firms disappeared forever. And everything started with a company that claimed it had reinvented the energy business. This is the story of Enron, the company that looked unstoppable until it became the biggest corporate scandal in American history. Enron was always a symbol of fraud. The company was created in 1985 after the merger of two natural gas pipeline businesses. At first, there was nothing unusual about it. At Cream, Enron simply transported natural gas through thousands of miles of pipelines across the United States. Its first CEO, Kenneth Lay, believed the future of energy wasn't just moving gas, it was trading it. During the late 1980s and early 1990s, the US government began deregulating energy markets. Instead of fixed prices controlled by regulators, companies could now buy and sell energy more freely. Lay saw an opportunity. Rather than acting like a traditional utility company, Enron wanted to become something completely different, a financial marketplace for energy. The company began buying and selling contracts for electricity and natural gas, allowing businesses to lock in future prices. Think of it like stock trading. But instead of shares, Enron traded energy. It was a revolutionary idea. Profits grew rapidly. Wall Street loved it. Investors believed Enron had discovered the future of business. By the mid-1990s, Enron was expanding into almost everything imaginable: electricity, water, broadband internet, paper, weather derivatives, even bandwidth trading. If there was a market, Enron wanted to create a financial product around it. The company promoted itself not as an energy business, but as an innovation company. Inside its Houston headquarters, employees were told they were changing the world, and many believed it. By the late 1990s, Enron had become one of the fastest-growing companies in America. Its stock price kept climbing. Fortune magazine named Enron America's most innovative company for 6 consecutive years. Executives became celebrities. Kenneth Lay was respected across Washington. Jeffrey Skilling, Enron's brilliant but aggressive executive, became known as the company's visionary. To the outside world, Enron looked unstoppable. But behind the impressive numbers, something was deeply wrong. The secret behind Enron's success wasn't selling more energy. It was making investors believe the company was making far more money than it actually was. Or Jeffrey Skilling believed traditional accounting didn't reflect Enron's true value. Instead, the company relied heavily on something called mark-to-market accounting. Normally, a company records profits only after it actually earns them. Enron did something very different. The moment it signed a long-term contract, it estimated how much profit the deal might generate over the next 10, 15, or even 20 years. Then it booked that estimated profit immediately, even if the money hadn't been earned, even if the customer never paid, even if the project eventually failed. If executives expected a contract to make $1 billion in the future, Enron could report much of that profit today. On paper, earnings looked incredible. In reality, many of those profits existed only in spreadsheets. When real projects failed to meet expectations, Enron faced a serious problem. Its reported profits couldn't suddenly disappear. So executives found another solution. They began hiding losses. The company created hundreds of separate partnerships, known as special purpose entities, or SPEs. Officially, these companies were independent. In reality, many were secretly controlled by Enron executives themselves. Unprofitable assets and billions of dollars in debt were quietly transferred into these partnerships. To investors, Enron's balance sheet looked healthy, but the debt hadn't vanished. It had simply been moved out of sight. One of the key figures behind this system was Chief Financial Officer Andrew Fastow. Ironically, he managed many of these partnerships while still working as Enron's CFO. This created an enormous conflict of interest, yet the arrangements were approved anyway. As long as Enron's stock price kept rising, the system appeared to work. The company's soaring share price became the foundation supporting the entire illusion. Executives encouraged employees to buy Enron stock. Retirement accounts became heavily invested in company shares. Investors kept buying, analysts kept praising. The media celebrated Enron as the company of the future. Almost nobody asked a simple question: where was all the real cash coming from? Because beneath the record-breaking profits, the business was becoming increasingly fragile, and it only needed one crack for the entire structure to collapse. The illusion worked for years, but in 2001, people finally began looking behind the numbers. A few journalists and financial analysts started asking uncomfortable questions. Enron's financial reports were incredibly complex. The company reported huge profits, but its cash flow didn't tell the same story. One of the loudest critics was short seller Jim Chanos, who believed Enron's financial statements simply didn't add up. Then, in August 2001, something unexpected happened. Jeffrey Skilling suddenly resigned as CEO. He claimed it was for personal reasons, but the timing shocked investors. If Enron was doing so well, why was its top executive leaving? Only a few days later, another warning came from inside the company. Vice President Sharon Watkins sent a confidential letter to Kenneth Lay. She warned that Enron could implode in a wave of accounting scandals. Her concerns were largely ignored. By October, the cracks could no longer be hidden. Enron announced a massive loss. The company also admitted that it had overstated profits and failed to disclose billions of dollars in debt. Investors panicked. The stock began to collapse. Just 1 year earlier, Enron shares had traded for around $90. Within weeks, they were worth only a few dollars. Employees watched their retirement savings disappear almost overnight. Many had been encouraged to invest heavily in Enron stock. Some had nearly all of their retirement money tied to the company. As the share price crashed, they couldn't sell because their retirement accounts were temporarily frozen during an administrative transition. While many employees were trapped, some executives had already sold millions of dollars worth of their own shares. Confidence evaporated. Banks stopped lending. Business partners backed away. The company was running out of cash. In a desperate attempt to survive, Enron agreed to be acquired by rival energy company Dynegy. For a brief moment, it looked like the company might be saved, but after reviewing Enron's finances, Dynegy walked away from the deal. The problems were simply too large. Without a buyer, Enron had nowhere left to turn. On December 2, 2001, Enron filed for bankruptcy. At the time, it was the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history. A company once valued at tens of billions of dollars had collapsed in just a matter of weeks. But the story wasn't over. The bankruptcy would expose one of the biggest corporate frauds ever uncovered, and it would bring down far more than just Enron itself. Enron was gone, but its collapse sent shockwaves through the entire business world. As investigators dug deeper, they uncovered years of accounting fraud. Billions of dollars in debt had been hidden. Profits had been inflated. Investors had been misled. The scandal quickly spread beyond Enron itself. The company's auditor, Arthur Andersen, had approved Enron's financial statements for years. And when the investigation began, Andersen employees were caught destroying large numbers of audit documents. The firm's reputation collapsed almost instantly. Although the conviction related to document destruction was later overturned, the damage was irreversible. Clients left. Employees resigned. One of the world's big five accounting firms effectively disappeared. Attention then turned to Enron's executives. Andrew Fastow pleaded guilty to fraud and cooperated with prosecutors. Jeffrey Skilling was convicted on multiple counts of fraud, conspiracy, and insider trading. He received a lengthy prison sentence, though it was later reduced. Kenneth Lay was also found guilty. But before he could be sentenced, he died of a heart attack in 2006. For thousands of Enron employees, the consequences were devastating. More than 20,000 people lost their jobs. Many also lost the retirement savings they had spent years building. Investors lost an estimated $70 billion in market value. The scandal shook confidence in corporate America. People began asking how a company praised by analysts, auditors, and investors could have been hiding so much for so long. The answer was uncomfortable. Too many people had trusted the numbers without questioning how they were created. The fallout led to major reforms. In 2002, the U.S. government passed the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, introducing stricter rules for financial reporting, executive responsibility, and corporate audits. The goal was simple: make another Enron much harder to hide. Enron's headquarters were emptied. Its famous logo disappeared. A company once considered one of America's greatest success stories became a warning taught in business schools around the world. Enron didn't invent corporate fraud, but it showed how dangerous it can become when ambition, weak oversight, and blind trust come together. On paper, Enron looked like one of the most successful companies in America. In reality, much of that success never existed, and when investors finally realized the truth, one of the biggest business empires in history collapsed almost overnight.